Which MMO should you play in 2025? Welcome to my end of year MMO slop video where I try and milk the YouTube algorithm for all that it's worth. Oh, for fuck's sake. Wait, don't turn off. I promise you this is different from the other MMO slop you see on the internet. For starters, I'm not going to purposely rage bait you by talking about the top 10 MMOs and telling you that they are all average.
Stop playing Runescape! Oh my god, there are so many better games!
Instead, I'm going to talk about all the niche MMOs I've played and show you the amount of hours I have in the game where possible. If not, I'll just estimate it. That way you know the value of my opinion when talking about a game.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But not only that, I'm going to talk about the MMOs I plan on playing in 2025 and what my honest opinion is at this moment in time. And then I'm going to stick everything on a tier list. Genius, I know. So if you enjoy hearing about dead and irrelevant MMOs, then maybe you'll also like my dead and irrelevant YouTube channel where I make video essays about games people have never heard of. Like and subscribe? So stick around as I make a MMO tier list of a bunch of games that no one has ever heard of, apart from that one bloke who no-lifed it for 10 years and just found his way into the YouTube comments. That could be you. And yes, I'm fully aware that Josh Drive Hayes is making a MMO tier list with 200 plus games on there.
God, you can tell he's a virgin.
But you know what? I guarantee he'll miss at least one of the MMOs I talk about today. And isn't that one reason alone a good enough incentive to watch this video? And with the intro out the way, let's take an alternative look at some of the MMOs you should consider playing in 2025. So let's start this tier list with a strong contender, and that is Star Wars Galaxies. Although technically closed down, it is still very accessible via private servers. Funnily enough, it is celebrating its 13-year death-iversary, which gave the Star Wars Galaxy Restoration server the perfect excuse to release more content. Unfortunately, I wasn't around to play it when it first released, although I did get to play about 20 hours on the private server, where I played as a Wookiee entertainer who danced in Mos Eisley mostly.
Backpacks, got jets, well I'm Boba, I got back, well I bounty hunt for Jabba Hutt to finance my bed.
And that's the great thing about Star Wars Galaxies. You don't have to play as the main character, you don't have to follow the Holy Trinity. If you wanted to spend your time crafting, you could do that. If you wanted to spend your time housing, you could do that. Roleplay, being an artisan, completely up to you. Unfortunately, it has aged quite a bit, and it does seem archaic in some of the UI and combat choices, but despite that, it is still considered quite revolutionary when it comes to MMORPG mechanics. In particular, the professions and the housing was way ahead of its time. So if there's one game you should try and play in 2025, it is 100% Star Wars Galaxies. I myself will definitely be trying to revisit this MMO, and I strongly advise you do too. And for that reason, I'm putting this MMO in S tier. Also, shameless plug, I will have an article on my website with more information as to how you can access some of these MMOs that are on private servers. Anyway, on to the next one. Sticking to the theme of boomer MMOs, we are looking at Dark Age of Camelot. Developed in 2 years and released in 2001, this PvP-centric MMO carries a lot of nostalgia with it. Despite its age, this MMO is still alive and kicking, with official and unofficial servers to play on. However, the one mistake I made on my playthrough is that I played on the official servers. If you have a look at my comments section, you can see everyone tells you about the Eden server, which is by far more populated and apparently a lot more fun and social. I did enjoy my time playing Dark Age of Camelot, however I was solo for most of it, and one of the key features about this game is the fact that it is a social MMO. Due to the player population and probably my own inexperience, I didn't even get to try out the PvP, which is kind of important in a PvP-centric game like this one. Another fun fact about this title is that the Elder Scrolls Online is the spiritual successor to Dark Age of Camelot. Matt Freyer, who was an executive producer of Dark Age of Camelot at the time, was hired by ZeniMax to lead them with Elder Scrolls Online. And of course, they borrowed a few ideas, such as the free faction PvP, large castle sieges, and big open world battles. So as I said, I do want to check this title out again. However, I do have to rank this on my previous experience and go off what some of my friends have told me about the Eden server, which honestly sounds quite amazing. So for that reason, I am going to rank Dark Age of Camelot an A tier MMO. Definitely a title worth checking out in 2025. This year I discovered a lot of MMORPGs, but by far Wurm Online was one of my favourites. Released in 2006, this is once again another nostalgia trip for a lot of people, although I feel like more people have heard about Wurm Online than actually played it. It is a survival MMORPG developed by none other than Notch, who, invented Minecraft, that little game. Over the span of a week, I sunk 37 hours into Wurm Online, which I know to some people might not seem like a lot, but at the same time, I was doing my actual full-time job, whilst also not neglecting my responsibilities as an adult. So yeah, I might have been slightly addicted to it for that whole week. But by far, one of the most enjoyable things about this title is the community. They were very helpful, they were very friendly, and it had that social MMO feel about it. But don't let that fool you, because this game can be ruthless. It does have open world PvP in certain areas. But what this game does really well is that it puts the RP back in MMORPG. It does allow you to roleplay as a farmer, a builder. You can run your own tavern. It's completely up to you as to how you want to play this game. And that's why it probably is one of the ultimate sandbox titles you can play. With all that being said though, it does suffer from a little bit of jank. It is quite a slow MMO and the combat isn't great. But people play Runescape, right? And that game...
Stop playing RuneScape!
Well, if it wasn't for the fact that I enjoy making variety content and obviously have a full-time job and a social life, I would probably still be playing Wurm Online. It is a game that will suck you in. It's just that there's a lot of time commitment that is required to play it. So if you do feel like building a house and seeing how many hours it takes you to do it, well, the good news is Wurm Online is free on Steam. So where do I rank Wurm Online on the tier list? Well, for starters, I will say this. I do believe it's worth playing in 2025. The devs have recently overhauled it and made it a little less janky and the UI a lot better, which has resulted in a bump in the player population. That alone is enough to spark a lot of people's curiosity and get them to try it. However, I do feel like it needs a lot more polish. Don't get me wrong, I do feel like this game is really worth your time, but I will say it's a B tier MMO simply because it's not for everyone and a lot of people will probably quit within the first hour or two. And for that reason, it can't be anything higher than a B until maybe the player retention is sorted out. But like I said, it's still one of my most favourite games of 2024. Whilst we're on the topic of hardcore sandbox MMORPGs, let's take a look at Mortal Online 2. It is renowned for having full loot PvP, but its greatest selling point is simply the immersion, the roleplay.
Today, you may not have breasts, you may own a cock. When Tom's in Badoo, Tom asks, why not?
And of course, the fact that you're stuck in first person mode. Over the years, big streamers have come and gone.
My name is Gluglob. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm going to ask you a riddle.
And a lot of them tend to enjoy the game, but due to the player population averaging about 1,000, it just isn't sustainable as a content creator. There is only one active server, which means everyone all over the globe will literally be playing together, which is either the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. I guess it depends on what your ping is. Fast travel is very limited and resources are spread throughout the map along with other dungeons and points of interest. This acts as a natural catalyst for player interaction and of course open world PvP if you choose to partake in it. There is even a criminal and justice system, which means if you want to go around ganking people all day, well, you're likely to get bounty hunted and lose all your gear. But not only that, you won't be welcome into some of the towns, and there are guard towers posted around the whole of the globe. And I have to say, this is by far one of my most favourite social MMOs I've ever played. There is no cash shop, there is no pay to win. The only thing you do have to pay is a monthly subscription. But it's not all rose-tinted glasses. There is, of course, a bit of jank to the game, and the combat is less than desirable. Starvolt and the team are constantly updating the game, and usually for positive reasons. If I was to break this game down into its rawest form, it would simply be Ultimate Online, but in 3D. Even though I don't play the game as much as I used to, I still drop in on Twitch streams just to keep up with the local politics. I've had so many random fun adventures in this game, but it just isn't for everyone. I think there's a lot you have to get your head around before you can actually start enjoying this game. And for that reason, I can't put in an A tier or S tier. It's going to have to be another B tier MMO. But I would strongly advise, if you get the opportunity, especially if you do a free weekend, give it a go. It might just become your main MMO. As a child, I grew up playing Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, watched my brother play 10, and yeah, I loved the Final Fantasy series. With the modern ones though, it kind of lost its charm, which is why Final Fantasy 11 is just so great. I missed out on playing it as a kid, so it's actually fun to go back and play it as an adult, and I was taken back by the amount of nostalgia this game had on me, especially considering I had never played it before. And what I mean by that is the graphics, the story, the combat was all reminiscent of the previous titles. Despite its age, it did have quite an active player base, and it is sort of accessible through Steam, but to actually install it, I'm not going to lie, it was a bit of a ball ache. Sadly though, after 20 years, Final Fantasy 11 is heading into maintenance mode, which basically means there'll be no more updates to support the game. However, in my comments section, enough people did suggest to me that I check out the private servers for Final Fantasy 11, as apparently they're more popular and quite well run. Maybe they'll have some custom content added as well, who knows. I managed to sink 32 hours into Final Fantasy 11, but by no means is it a solo friendly MMO. There's a lot of emphasis on group play and being social, which is the whole reason for playing an MMO in the first place. One thing to note is that the game doesn't always explain everything too well, so don't be surprised if you're constantly Googling what to do next, and trust me, those wiki pages are a godsend. Although my time was brief on the official servers, I would love to come back and try it out on a private server to see what the main differences are. So where would I put Final Fantasy 11 on the tier list? Well, I think it's safe to say it's an A tier MMO. And you never know, the private servers might bump it up to an S tier. We'll just have to wait and see what this year brings. Pax Dei was advertised as a Unreal Engine 5 open world sandbox MMORPG with aspects of open world PvP, with a focus on being a social MMO, which I always find hilarious because most of these games don't even have VoIP. But I digress. There was a lot of hype around this game, and the 2 alpha tests actually were good showcases of what could be possible, but the combat was very lacking, and quite honestly, the game was very bare bones. But it was okay, it was still an alpha, therefore it's not an issue. And the developers behind this title did promise that all these issues would be addressed before release. Fast forward to June 2024, and Pax Dei is being fast-tracked to early access in the Steam library. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it came with 3 different purchase options, one of which being over $100. But better still, all the concerns that people had around the combat and certain aspects and features being missing were never addressed. This version of the game was very similar to a not so long ago alpha test. I know because I played both. Initially, there was some interest from the MMO community, and numbers weren't too bad on release, but if you look at them now, I think it's safe to say that there's not much life left in Pax Dei. But as much as I love shitting on Pax Dei, there is still a glimmer of hope. In 2025, there's a bunch of updates that they hope to roll out, which might just revive the game. Or do absolutely nothing for it and it will remain dead. Personally, I wouldn't recommend anyone goes out their way to buy this title. However, if you already do own it, it might just be worth playing in 2025 for a whole hour. But anyway, where would I put on the tier list? I mean, F tier. Only play it if it's an unwanted Christmas gift and you can't refund it on Steam. I wasn't sure whether to include Star Citizen on the list because technically it's still in alpha. I mean, it has been for the last 11 years. But with that being said, I feel like that's just going to be the trend with a lot of games going forward. Early access, alpha access, beta access, whatever access you want. Just don't call it fully released, otherwise people will be eligible for a refund. But that's a subject for another day. And I do feel like Star Citizen does get a lot of stigma by people who simply haven't even played it and just want to jump on the bandwagon of calling it a scam game. Personally, I have 50 hours in Star Citizen. I don't spend any more than 40 quid because that was the entry fee to get into the game. And I do actually own a spaceship which is technically worth $200. But at no point do I feel like I've been scammed. But I also don't feel like Star Citizen is 100% complete, which is why it's still in alpha, right? But even though the game isn't quite complete, there's still a lot to do. There's a lot to explore. There's missions to grind. There's gear to collect. There's spaceships to earn. And this game has so much potential as a social MMO. It has voice over IP. It has guilds. It even has these galactic-sized spaceships which require a whole crew to pilot them. Well, technically you could pilot with one person, but they function so much better when you have a team behind you working together. You can even go rogue and be a pirate shitter flying around in spaceships mugging people. I would never do that. This is the SS Chode. Put down your weapons. What?
He's in a rock. Look out the window. He's in a rock. He's in a personal miner.
Come in, miner. Do you hear me? I have made 2 videos on Star Citizen already, and I'm likely to make a third in 2025. I do enjoy the game, I just feel like it's incomplete, and there is still quite a lot of jank, which honestly, you just end up turning a blind eye to because it's an alpha, right? You have to use that excuse, even if it has been 10 years. So where would I rate Star Citizen? Well, this might surprise you, but I'm going to rank it C tier. And it's not because it's a bad game, it's simply because it's incomplete. There's still a single player campaign which needs to launch, there's still other galaxies that they need to put into the game, and there's still server meshing which needs to be properly configured. But I do think it's worth playing, and they do free weekends every so often. So even if you don't want to commit that little bit of entry fee money, you can just try a free weekend and see how you get on. So in 2025, I'm putting this on my list of games you should at least try out. There are 2 types of people in this world. Those who have played Lord of the Rings Online and those who have not and are missing out. This free-to-play MMO came out in 2007 and to this day is somehow still plodding along. Personally, I've sunk 20 hours into this title and they were 20 enjoyable hours. Can you help me carry my heavy sack? No. He's just gone. Oh, this is definitely not where my sack needs to go. Yes, there were some age-related issues to the game, such as the population not being there, no one in PvP, and the tab targeting at times still feeling a bit janky. But despite this, there's a level of wholesomeness to this title, as well as a very well-written, story-driven narrative. If you are a fan of The Lord of the Rings, then there's a lot of lore to be absorbed from this game. And if not, well, you're about to learn something new. And this is probably the only game I've seen where you can buy the DLC with in-game currency. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I hope to return to Lord of the Rings Online in 2025, even if it is just to walk to Mordor as a hobbit, or to check out their hardcore servers where you can actually increase the difficulty of the game. So where would I put LOTRO on the tier list? In my humble opinion, I see it as a C tier MMO, simply because you're not going to main it anytime soon, but there's still a lot of content for you to try out, and you might get slightly addicted. Not enough to main it, but enough to at least spend a good few hours in it. So yes, C for cozy. Sticking to the theme of every big IP needs its very own MMO, we are looking at Star Wars The Old Republic.
My backpacks got jets. Well, I'm Boba. I got fat. Well, I bounty hunt for Jabba Hutt.
Ignore that. That's my private footage. Anyway, this year I decided to sink 100 hours into Star Wars The Old Republic in order to give it a fair review. And all I can say is, after 100 hours, I probably need another 100 more. I did, however, enjoy the character I made, the Fat DeLorean.
What the hell is even that?
Star Wars The Old Republic is very much all about the lore and story. It's a very solo-friendly MMO, and there are social aspects to it still, but a lot of people, I get the feeling, tend to play alone. In my 100-hour playthrough, I did manage to finish the main story quest, but I didn't really do too much else. I was too low level to enjoy PvP. If I was a higher rank and properly geared up, I might have actually enjoyed PvP, but unfortunately I never got to see that side of it. Housing, I mean, I had a house, but it was empty, so didn't really get to experience that. And it was only after 50 hours that I actually started to do dungeons. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot to do in this MMO, and even after 100 hours, I only scratched the surface. I think I spent more time exploring and just seeing the galaxy than I did actually focusing on leveling up. Broadsword did announce though that they will be introducing some new content as well as a graphic enhancement. So the game isn't quite dead yet, but it does show that there still might be life in this title. I do have plans to play Star Wars The Old Republic in 2025, simply because I want to play some of the other DLCs, but not only that, I want to see what endgame looks like. In my opinion, I'd say Star Wars The Old Republic is a B-tier MMO. It certainly has its pros and cons, and I feel like unless you actually enjoy playing MMO solo or are a fan of the Star Wars universe, then this might not necessarily be the game for you. If you're still on the fence though, you can play for free up until level 60, which I'd say will give you enough time to make up your mind as to whether you want to main Star Wars The Old Republic. But like Lord of the Rings Online, I feel like it's a title everyone should at least try once. If you ever wondered what Fallout would look like if it was a MMO, not that crap, then Fallen Earth is the answer. Based in a post-apocalyptic Earth with the main focus being in Las Vegas, sounds familiar, Fallen Earth is a tab-targeting, old-school, meaty game. There's a lot of lore, there's a lot of skills to grind, and plenty to explore. There's also different roles that you can do. You can be an armor smith or you could be a medic. There's different professions similar to Star Wars Galaxies, and like Star Wars Galaxies, you're limited to how many you can do. And for me, I like this aspect because it does encourage you to be social. And the one thing I can say is that there is a social community here, and they are very welcoming and helpful to new players. The community aren't stupid, they want you to stick around and play their game, so they're going to make sure you have an enjoyable first experience. It was never big on release, and since it's launched, it's been bought out, closed down, and brought back to life again. It is completely free to play due to the new owners deciding to give the game back to the people. And when I say free, I mean no cash shop either. I enjoyed my brief time in Fallen Earth, and it is certainly a MMO that benefits from having friends. If you are looking for a bit of an alternative MMO, then this is the one for you. I would rate this an A-tier MMO because it does everything right apart from having an actual player base. So one to try out in 2025 for sure. I'm going to be completely honest here, I don't know where to start with Haven and Hearth, because quite frankly, it was one of the most surprising titles this year. I went into it with such low expectations, I didn't expect to find such a gem. The best way to describe it is if Wurm Online and Runescape had a baby, and that's how you get Haven and Hearth. In recent years, it's gone from 2D to 3D. Yes, the graphics are still questionable, but I think it adds to the whole charm of the game. And another leap forward for this title was that it's now available on Steam to download for free. Is it going to set the world alight? No. Does it have the most players? No. Is it a lot of fun? Hell yes. And what makes it so fun? is the difficulty. There is open world PvP, but you have to be a certain level to actually do that and unlock the skills, and it has permadeath. Although technically when you die, you do lose all your experience, but you don't lose any gear that you have. It's just out there in the wild, ready for you to collect. And it's the same with your house or plot that you put down. You don't lose it, it's just that you gotta go run back to it. But don't let this feature put you off. You'll be surprised at how easy it is to get over dying. Trust me, I know I died several times, even to a swan once. And when starting out, the combat isn't easy, and it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to build up your skills over time. Like I said, think RuneScape, but not as grindy. Part of the fun though is discovering new skills, new recipes, and just not really knowing what to do. Yes, there is a wiki page, but you could also be social and talk to other players. I mean, imagine that in an MMO. I had a great sense of achievement from building my little homestead, even though I knew it was crap compared to everyone else's. So the main question is, where would I put this on my tier list? I think given the hardcore nature of this MMO, it's hard to say S tier, so I'm going to go one below and say A tier. So don't let the hardcore tag throw you off, because honestly, I think it is a lot of fun, and you might just surprise yourself as to how much you enjoy it. Personally, I'd still be playing it now if I didn't have a YouTube channel to run. The game is more addictive than meth. Dragon's Dogma Online was the last video I'd done, and probably the last review I'll do for 2024, and by all means, it was probably one of the best MMOs I've played this year. Which is shocking because this game can only be played through private servers because it is dead. This was Capcom's first MMO, and what they did is they took Dragon's Dogma, the original one, and said, yes, let's make it into an MMO because this is what everyone wants. And what they delivered was a MMO that everyone wanted. Sadly though, only for the Eastern market. I think they got the balance just right when it comes to delivering a standout RPG, which also has all the social elements that an MMO should have. The story, although in Japanese and yes translated to English, was decent, I understood it, it was easy to follow, and it did kind of pull you in. The combat was S tier, I loved the combat in this game. The world bosses, some of them are Elden Ring level of difficulty, which gives you the right amount of challenge without making you feel that it's impossible to beat them. And the crafting is such a great system, and I have nothing bad to say about this game. I think the only thing that is disappointing is that there's not more players playing it, but I understand it's dead, it's on private servers. If anything, it's more annoying that it closed down because I'm pretty sure if it did come out, people would still be playing it to this day, including myself. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see all the social aspects in its full glory. I mean, there's 8-player raids for Christ's sake, and it's hard enough to get another player to play with you. This is going to sound silly, but I still think about this game now to this day, and I do get tempted to play it, but I have to pull myself back because I don't think I want to main a dead game. So where am I putting it on the tier list? Well, I'm just going to say it, this game is S tier. Maybe I still have rose-tinted glasses on, or maybe I just have a thing for dead MMOs, I don't know. Either way though, I feel like this is a game you should definitely give a try in 2025. I promise you, you won't regret it. So these are the games I recommend you play in 2025 based on my own knowledge and playtime. But what I want to talk about next is the games you have recommended and which ones I plan on playing and my current thoughts on them. I will also be ranking these games based on what I know from my own research and what you have commented. Hopefully we can revisit this video in a year and see if I rated them correctly. Also, feel free to comment if you think my rating is unjust. So let's kick it off with a classic. Every time I mention hardcore and sandbox, I have about 10 comments in that video telling me to go play EVE Online. And it is something that has been on my radar for quite some time. A friend of mine actually reviewed it this year, and he's even invited me back to go play it with him. So it's very likely I'm going to go play this in 2025 and just get the rundown on it, because I've heard so many mixed emotions about this game. Some people say it's a spreadsheet simulator. Some people say it's the best MMO they've ever played. And it has been going on for over 20 years now. And with that, you have to question, is it that bad of a game if it's still going after such a long time? And they're still getting updates. I am a fan of the sandbox genre, and I don't shy away from sci-fi. I generally like sci-fi. So a space MMO doesn't put me off. And I've heard the stories, we've all heard about that time the shields went down and like 10 billion ships got destroyed and they lost millions, blah, blah, blah. So overall, it does sound like it has a good history and there's fun to be had. But I have heard people say it's boring because, like I said, spreadsheet simulator. So where would I place it on the tier list currently? I'm going to go for B tier MMO, and that's not a bad place to be. Wurm Online is a B tier MMO, and I highly rate that. It's just that it is a bit old and dated and a bit janky, and EVE Online could follow a very similar pattern. So EVE Online, B tier for now. But I am looking forward to playing it. Another highly recommended one is Warhammer Online. I have had so many people tell me how great this is, how good the PvP is, and how stable the private servers are. But my only issue is, I know absolutely nothing about Warhammer. So I have no idea if that will affect my gaming experience. I did, however, watch Mitch Manick's video on Warhammer Online, and he sold this game to me a long time ago, but I just haven't had time to go play it. But given the amount of hype I've heard about this game and how everyone praises it, and I've heard nothing negative about this title, so given everything I've heard about this game, I'm going to have to rank this as a A-tier MMO for now, and after I played it, let's see if we can bump it up to a S-tier, or whether everyone's just got copium. But I look forward to playing this. 100% you should play this too. At this point, it just looks like I'm stealing ideas from other content creator friends, which I'm not. But Salem the Game actually looks somewhat up my alley. It seems like something I would enjoy because it's a hardcore, permadeath, freaky looking MMO, and that ticks all my boxes.
Perfection.
It's over 10 years old and it's got a strong whiff of death about it. And you know me, I love dead games. So I promise you, at some point in 2025, I'm going to play Salem the Game because that has S tier written all over it. I joke. In fact, I'm going to put this as C tier because it's a safe, middle-of-the-road place. But I do generally find these sort of games have a lot to offer. So yeah, I think you should probably try and play it in 2025 as well, so I can have a friend to play with. Next up, we're going to look at the top 5 MMOs, and I'm going to give my opinion, and I'm also going to look at what you guys said about these games. When I asked the experts in one of my previous videos, the comment section was wild, and people were angry. So, by making you guys vote, you can only be angry at yourselves. So let's kick it off with what might be the best MMO to play. According to a lot of you, a lot of content creators, OldSchool RuneScape is a S tier MMO that we should all play. It has nothing to do with nostalgia, it is just fact that if you have the latest PC, this is the game you're going to want to install. Which is exactly why I will be reviewing OldSchool RuneScape this year. And I've already started playing it, and I have a roadmap as to what I need to achieve. I can hardly contain my excitement for playing this title. So straight to the top of the tier list, OldSchool RuneScape goes. Next on the list is Retail WoW, which got 1.2k votes and was overall rated as a A-tier MMO. I'll be honest, I have no strong opinions for or against Retail WoW because I've never played it. And I don't know if I'll even bother playing it this year, or next year, or the year after. It just doesn't interest me at the moment. Maybe I will, but everyone thinks it's A tier, so on the list it goes as a A tier MMO. Next. I forgot to do a poll for Classic WoW, and I know they should be considered two separate games, but I didn't separate them. I'm sorry. Next. So one of the most popular polls was Final Fantasy XIV, which got 1,700 votes and 72 comments. And you guys decided it was a A-tier MMO. And to be honest, I see that. And I can also see it being a S-tier MMO because there is a lot for people to do. It's got that whole theme park MMO vibe going on, and it's such a good IP. Personally, I've played almost 30 hours, and I enjoyed my time, even though I went a black mage and cucked myself basically. But I can definitely see this being a S-tier MMO, and it might be something that I do try and review next year, potentially as a 100-hour review. No promises though. So let's put this on the list as A-tier. Technically, I don't know if this is a top 5 MMO anymore, but I thought I'd put the vote out there. And according to you guys, it is a B to C tier MMO. But I'm going to help you along with that. I'm just going to say it's a C tier MMO. It is going in maintenance mode, it is monetized to fuck, and the devs just don't care about the game, so why should you? C tier MMO. You're lucky I'm not making it a F tier MMO. Guild Wars 2 is everyone's favourite MMO to say nothing bad about. I mean, that's all I can really take from this. It's a average MMO, it's pretty good, it's not amazing, but people do enjoy playing it. You guys voted it as a A-tier MMO, and that's absolutely fine. I think it probably is more B-tier, but I'm going to go with A-tier. So, Guild Wars 2, better than average. Or is it just average? So this one is actually quite controversial because if you'd asked me about a week ago, I would tell you this is a F-tier MMO. And I think when I done the poll, a lot of you were probably in the same mindset. But they have just recently announced PvP servers and a whole lot more content. And that is very enticing. As someone who despises the way the devs treat their player base, I am somewhat drawn back to New World right now. So you guys voted it a B to C tier MMO. I'm going to say B tier, and we're just going to wait and see. It isn't a bad game, it's just that the devs treat the game badly. So yeah, that's where I stand with this. B tier MMO. So my goal at the start of the video was to tell you about a bunch of MMOs you should play in 2025. And then tell you where I rate these MMOs. So let me just fix this list. So at the top 5 MMOs, I'm leaving on OldSchool RuneScape, Final Fantasy XIV, and believe it or not, New World. New World's going to be hard to rank until I actually play the update, so it could be anywhere from a B tier MMO to an F tier MMO. And I think Final Fantasy XIV and OldSchool RuneScape are seen as S tier by a lot of people, and for that reason, I want to give them a full review. Some of you might be asking, where is Ashes of Creation? Well, I'm not going to recommend a game that costs $100 to playtest. As much as I'm playing it and enjoying it, I'm not going to recommend anyone goes out there and buys it. And believe me, there's more than 3 games I'll be doing video reviews on next year. I'm keeping my cards close to my chest because I think I have some really, really niche MMOs to try out, and I want to be the first one to do it. Originally, I wasn't going to include the top 5 MMOs, but after the backlash on my last tier list video, where the experts rated the MMOs, I was interested to see how the community views would match up to the experts. So, without further delay, here's the results. Wow, such variety. Look at all those opposing opinions. I think when it comes to the top 5 or even top 10 MMOs, it doesn't really vary that much. Everyone seems to be somewhat on the same page. Hopefully today I've provided you with some new MMO slop, which was different from the other MMO slop that's out there. And not to throw too much shade, but at least when I'm ranking the MMOs I'm talking about, I've actually played them. And on that bombshell, I'm going to end the video there. Feel free to leave a comment below disagreeing or agreeing with anything I said, or even to suggest another dead MMO I should go and review. And if you've liked the video, leave a like. And if you've got this far in the video without subscribing, then why? You clearly don't find me that annoying you have to click off in the first 30 seconds. Maybe I deserve the sub. I'll leave a few videos on the screen for you here. Check out the description for any references to any games which have been mentioned. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.